I want the ball to be played forward. I want the ball to go down the sides. I want one-on-ones as much as possible where I believe that my player is going to beat his opponent. This guy's going to give us results. This guy's going to improve us. This guy's going to make us better. And I genuinely believe wherever I go, I will make the club or the National Association better than they are right now. You should have fear. I think if you are not worried about your job, about your performance, you don't care. You don't care enough to work a little bit harder to make it better.
Welcome to the Football Economy, the show where we dive into the dynamic forces shaping the global football landscape. I'm Ibrahim, and today we're joined by Stephen Constantine. Stephen is an international head coach, a global football reformer, and a man whose coaching journey spans 4 continents and counting. From grassroots development in Africa to transforming football in South Asia, Stephen's legacy goes far beyond match results. He led India to its highest ever FIFA ranking in 2017, modernized systems in countries like Rwanda and Nepal, and recently guided Pakistan to their first ever World Cup qualifying victory. His leadership is a blueprint for national teams everywhere when it comes to player revival, player development, and football diplomacy. Stephen is also the author of the prominent book, From Delhi to the Den, The Story of Football's Most Traveled Coach, a memoir that takes us inside his global journey and the lessons he's learned along the way. Today, we're going to dive into his career, his mindset, and the mission to transform football where it's needed most. Stephen, welcome to the Football Economy.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the next episode.
Perfect, great. So let's start with sort of like a very interesting question to your background. I would say, I think doing research on you, I came across a clip that basically you were on BBC, I think, when you were doing the promotional rounds for your book from 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And in there, you basically said that your wife calls you a chameleon, which is a fascinating label in its own sense. As a man who's coached numerous national teams in places that most people would not want to visit, and you've obviously been forced to adapt to different cultures, challenges, and systems. What does your wife mean by this label, a chameleon?
I think she was referring to my adaptability. I really don't pay too much attention to the religions, the color of the skins, how you pray, how you don't pray. I'm only interested in your football abilities, and obviously I go to a lot of these countries because I can help them. They want me to help them. More importantly, I think my ability to connect with the people in whatever country I'm in is what she means. I mean, if I had to change the color of my skin to blend in with where I was, I would do that. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah, it's well understood. I mean, so looking at your career, I know that you've coached national teams such as India, Nepal, Rwanda, Malawi, Sudan, and much more. But let me say, the first question would be, what first sparked your interest in pursuing an international career?
Do you know, I realized early on as a player that I wasn't going to be playing in the Premier League. When I got injured at 28, I had already completed some of my coaching badges. And so my thought process was, okay, well, I'm not going to play. Being able to teach others how to play football is obviously for me the next best thing. And I actually through the English FA, I got my first international job in Nepal. Obviously, I was in the States at that time when I got offered the job, but I didn't intentionally say, okay, I want to be an international manager. I have coached 7 national teams so far, and as you said earlier, I'm not done, but I am more than happy in coaching club football, and also having just got my degree in sports directorship, I have played the role as sporting director as well. So, and I'm happy to do so going forward.
Yeah, the sporting director role is a very prominent role right now, especially for club football. But I can imagine it might have even more significance for national federations. Looking at your early struggles, this comes from your book specifically, From Delhi to the Den. I know that you've basically talked about, first of all, kudos to you for being very transparent. It's not that easy to talk about early struggles. A lot of people want to just talk about, obviously, the highs and gloss over the lows. But you've basically been an open book when it comes to your book. And yeah, very good reference for people people or anyone in any career who's looking for insights into how to achieve their dreams. But in terms of the question I want to ask, it's around, the early struggles of basically having to borrow money to survive, sleeping in your car. How has this basically shaped your resilience and your expectations from others you've worked with in terms of getting to the destination of your goal?
I guess I would say I'm completely obsessed with football. It's been in my life since I can remember, playing football in the playground, at school, using jackets as goalposts and that kind of thing. But I've only ever wanted to do one thing, and that was to play football. And obviously, when that was taken away, it was to coach football. And that's still the case. I watch as much football as I possibly can. I go to as many games as I possibly can, and I love being on the pitch with the players, coaching, teaching, and learning myself. And I think those difficult times that we have throughout our life, sometimes a little bit longer than others, but I think that's what shapes you. I'm not trying to be cliche here, but I'm extremely privileged to be able to be in the game at the level that I am. And I think necessarily appreciate things as much as you do unless you've struggled. I believe it's way too easy for people at the moment, to get things done. Whether it's your coaching badge or whether it's the opportunity to play, it was a lot more difficult maybe 10 years ago and more. But look, everyone has a story. I believe everyone has their own struggles to deal with. And I think sometimes the best way is to be open about it. And that's the way that I chose. I am the way I am because of how I've lived my life.
Yeah, it's a fair point and a remarkable life you lived. So let's go and transition into the football side of things. So when you basically step into a football environment, a new environment, say a national team, in terms of the football culture, how do you build trust, and how do you basically understand the nuance of that environment?
That's a really, really good question. And I think obviously building trust takes time. I think whether you're going to a club or a national team, you like to think that there is a culture already at the club, and that particular culture has to align with your beliefs. If there are completely different beliefs to what you want, then there's no point to go to the club. But having said that, when you're at a club or a national association, you can set the culture. And I think, again, I don't want to sound like too cliche, but effort doesn't cost anything. Being on time doesn't cost anything. And I think if you show your effort in training and you're on time, then the rest will come together. And I think I'm very transparent with the players. I will help the players as much as I can. I'll tell them exactly what I'm thinking, and I'll tell them how we're going to fix the problem if there are problems. So I think, all in all, being honest, the word emotional intelligence. Okay, if you don't have that in your locker as a coach, you're never going to be a coach that is respected or thought upon. And when people are talking about you 10 years, 5 years, 15 years later, you impacted their lives. And I think obviously playing football is the best thing in the world for me. And being able to teach somebody how to play football, you're giving him the tools to go and make a career for himself. I follow a lot of the players. I still have relationships with players I coached 15, 20, 25 years ago. And I think, it's being able to understand the players. And a lot of people don't. They think they get loads of money and they drive big fat cars and they go here, they go there. They don't have any issues. But you know what? They have wives, and those wives have problems, and children, and they have problems, and going to school, and the kids getting sick, and all of this. And and then on top of that, they've got to play in front of 20, 30, 40,000 people and play well. Again, you have the social media now. It's everywhere, so everyone has an opinion. And I could go on and on, but I'll stop.
No, it's a good point. Evolution never stops in that sense. And in terms of basically being a chameleon, as your wife has said, how would you say your philosophy has evolved across the different continents and across different years that you've been managing?
Look, there's no one way that fits everything. So you go to India and you need to behave a certain way. You have to understand that before you get in the country. You go to Pakistan, it's not exactly the same way. You go to Rwanda or Malawi, it's different. Rwanda is not the same as Malawi, and Malawi is not the same as Sudan. Every country has its own little nuances, their culture. And my job is to teach them or help them develop the football. My job is not to change their culture. So in Malawi, for example, sima is the local food. It's basically corn, and you bash the corn and you turn it into maize, and then you add water to that. And some people eat that 3 times a day. Who am I to say you cannot eat this because in England we have this or we have that? No, my job is to adapt myself to their culture and change the football culture. Try to improve that, not change the country's culture, which is, a lot of coaches are going abroad. They think, okay, well, I'm from England or Spain and this is how we do it there, so you've got to do it the same way. Not possible. It's just not possible. And you don't get the results that you want. You end up not giving them what they need, and you don't last very long.
True. And you're basically talking about change management in this case, and this is basically what a lot of football managers need to equip themselves with to be able to basically last in a job over time and be able to be adaptable. Some of elite managers such as yourself are well versed with this. But in terms of the infrastructure, so building infrastructure from the ground up, I remember in your time in India where you had 2 stints, if I'm not mistaken, from 2002 to 2005, which was the first one, and then the second stint was 2015 to 2019. What were the distinct takeaways from those two stints? What comes to mind when you say, I took away from this in the first? Yeah.
I've had that question asked before, but I'm going to answer you in a different way, because I'm seeing it more and more. The powers that be at that time, it was Mr. Prabhat Patel, who was the president of the AIFF in the second stint. He hired me, okay, because he knew what I could do. I had done it 10 years earlier, just finished in Rwanda. And so he said to me, you know our culture already. You have been successful already. What do you need to take us to the World Cup? Was his question. And I said, sir, we are not going to the World Cup anytime soon. And he looked at me and I think, oh, maybe I'm not going to get the job. And I said, sir, we need to qualify for the Asian Cup, which is the European equivalent. We need to qualify for the Asian Cup consistently over the next 4 to 5 years. Whenever there's an Asian Cup, India needs to be there. Okay. So to do that, we need to dominate our own region. If we can do that, I said, we have half a chance. We dominated our region in my time, in both times. We qualified for the Asian Cup. We qualified through the group stages in 2019, and we were 1 point away from going to the last 16. Now, hiring somebody, when you're looking at a coach, what do you base your hiring criteria on? Is it, he played for West Ham for 500 games, or he played for Bayern Munich for 600 games? Oh, so he's going to be a good coach. Well, not everybody's cut out to be a coach. You may want to be a coach because obviously that keeps you in the game. And everybody, in my opinion, wants to be in football. But if you hire the wrong person and you go, wait a minute, why did he get the job? He failed there, failed there, failed there. I don't know who the decision makers are, but if somebody's failed 1, 2, 3 jobs, why do you think he's going to be successful with you? And this is what, as a sporting director now with my sporting director hat on, I believe that a lot of appointments are made based on relationships, which is fine, but it should be about what that person has done in previous jobs. What has he accomplished? What has he done? And on what budget? And what were the conditions that he found the club in? And I think that really disappoints me, because I think in every job I've been, I've made it a little better than what it was when I left. But then when you are looking for jobs at times and say, oh, well, maybe I don't have the name. That's an issue. And as a sporting director, one of the things that motivated me was, when I am a sporting director, I'm going to make sure that the right people are in the right place.
Yeah, I mean, so taking it further when it comes to having the right people in the right place and potentially having the right system in place, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you introduced the scouting systems and the GPS tracking system, which was unheard of at the time, during your time in India. And you're basically trying to develop the sort of like the underdeveloped football systems in that country. But looking at the current time we're living in right now, what technologies or practices do you see as non-negotiable today for any national team looking to compete?
I think, and thank you for bringing that up with the scouting thing. I actually do that everywhere we go. I have a guy called Derek Bragg, who used to play in the Bundesliga as a goalkeeper. He's an excellent scout. And In fact, we did a workshop in Pakistan recently about talent identification and looking for the players for national teams. Look, with a national team, depending on if you have the diaspora option, which is obviously taking players who are, in our case, we have 7 or 8 lads that are participating in the Pakistan national team who were born in other countries and lived in other countries. So knowing where they are they eligible to play for Pakistan? And I think when I go into a job, it's like, even at club level, the first thing I go to when I go to a club is, what does the academy have for me? And my first port of call after signing a deal at a club level is, I'll go to the academy and who do we have? Who is knocking on the door for the first team? I think it's important that we show the players that there is a legitimate pathway, and if the head coach of the national team or the club team goes to the academy and watches some academy games and spends a bit of time with the academy coaches, there is a genuine belief from the players and from the coaches that there's an opportunity for them to go up. But going back to India, we found a player playing seven-a-side, barefoot seven-a-side in Kerala, Ashik Kornian. He ended up playing for the Pakistan national team in the Asian Cup 3 years ago. He was playing in a field. It's about looking for players. In Sudan, I drove 4.5 hours down to Hessa, if you remember, to see a left back, because I liked what I saw when I saw him in Khartoum, but I wanted to see him in a different environment. And you know, if you don't go and see the players yourself, you can't actually have a complete opinion about him. So it's very, very important to think outside of the box. Yeah, okay, this is the first division. I'm only going to pick players from the first division. Why? There may be some very good players in the second division. Or we had Manveer Singh came from university. He wasn't even playing for a club. Now he's having a career at Mombagan. So it's really about looking under every rock to find talent.
Yeah, it's a good point. I do remember the story that you're basically referring to in Sudan, where you basically, I think that was the first and last time you ventured out of the top 2 teams to look for talent, because obviously you went to the bandit town or bandit city, and the president sent 2 SUVs, if I'm not mistaken. VIP treatment was what
He didn't tell me though.
True. But yeah, that was a fun read, and yeah, I do recall that. But in terms of navigating the political realm when it comes to football, the different dynamics and sort of like institutional resistance. If I'm not mistaken, you had a very big battle with the ISL, between the ISL clubs and the Indian national team, which was basically a constant during your time there. How do you manage this tension?
I was hired to select an Indian national team, and we had the Indian Super League, which I think was a great initiative. But when there were 7 foreigners playing in the league, I was basically watching 8 Indian players, and usually there would be a right back and a left back on both sides. So, okay, we have a few right backs and left backs, and it was not conducive to the national team. And I think, you know, I look at the situation now in Saudi Arabia, where they have, I believe it's 7 foreign players in the 11, and I'm thinking, okay, how are they going to make a team that's going to be competitive for the World Cup when they have the World Cup? And unless they change that rule and have it 4 foreigners and 7 Saudi players, like we did in India, in the end, now in India, it's 4 foreigners. But for the first year that I was there, it was 7. It took them a bit of time to understand it. And I get it. You want to attract TV, you want to attract investors. I understand that. But if your local players are not playing, then how do you expect to compete at the World Cup? I mean, you know, we have to ensure that the homegrown players get the opportunity to play for their countries and be able to participate and be competitive. You know, that was my thing. Is I feel very strongly about it. Doesn't matter what country you're in. We need to have some sort of regulation that permits X amount of local players playing in their home leagues for the sake of the national team.
Yeah, and this is a decent point to make for the growth of the national team. I mean, even during the time there, if I'm not mistaken, you had like a notable clash with Roberto Carlos, the famous Brazilian left back, which was a headline moment at the time.
Yeah, well,
what was that about?
Okay, it was basically there are FIFA calendar dates, and obviously when we are at the level that we were, we needed as many days as possible with the Indian-based players. Now, if they're not playing in their club sides, those extra few days that I would get them for, if I got them for, made a world of difference for me because A, they weren't match fit, and B, I could spend more time with them theoretically and practically in getting them up to speed with what we need. I remember that there was a game that was in the FIFA window. It was the day of the FIFA window, if I'm not mistaken. Roberto called me up and said, "Hey, coach, how are you? What's going on?" Lovely guy. And he said, "Listen," he said, "I'm not going to release so-and-so for the game. No, I'm not going to release so-and-so on, let's say, the 10th of June because we have a game." And I said, "Roberto, I'm not asking you. FIFA are telling you that you have to release the player. It's not optional." And by the way, instead of releasing him 2 or 3 days early to do me a favor, because the game that they were playing wasn't a do or die game that they would win the league or get relegated or anything like that. So I said, instead of releasing him 2 or 3 days early to give me a hand, you're telling me you don't want to release him on the day on the FIFA calendar window. I says, "I'm sorry, but I'm not going to let him not come to the camp." And he got upset with that.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear you talk with so much passion, to me, it seems to me that Jose Mourinho is the equivalent of you when it comes to managers with basically steel and conviction. When it comes to standing their ground and having like a sort of like a laser focused ideology and philosophy about how they manage. And yeah, it's admirable for potential managers who want to look for mentors in that sense. In terms of talent identification, let's talk about the Indian talent identification. What qualities did you prioritize during that time when scouting players in under sort of like sourced or under resourced environments?
We have a way of how we like to play. I want the ball to be played forward. I want the ball to go down the sides. I want one-on-ones as much as possible where I believe that my player is going to beat his opponent. I want two players attacking the box. Obviously, when we don't have the ball, I want everyone to get back behind the ball as quickly as we can. I mean, it's when you have the ball, you push forward. When you have the ball, defend. It's not rocket science. But getting the right players to do that with the right attitude is key. You have some very, very good players, and we had some very good players, but I tell you, every single one of them put the miles in. Very hardworking. We were very aggressive, very competitive. We didn't have the best quality, obviously, at the time. And a lot of my teams are like that. We want to play forward. We want to be aggressive. We want to attack. But we also defend as hard as we attack, we defend. And I think it's important to understand the mentality of the player, what type of player he is. Can he do that? I mean, putting players in positions that they are not used to, putting players into positions where they cannot. I watch football nowadays and you hear the commentators saying, well, Arsenal and Arteta have changed their formation 16 times in the first half. And I'm like, what? You have a formation, and in certain parts of the game, your formation is changed. It doesn't mean you're changing the whole formation. And like I said, a lot of people out there are trying to reinvent the wheel. And, you have the ball, go forward, open out. If you don't have the ball, get compact, shut people down. It's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science indeed. Transitioning to your time in Pakistan, I mean, currently still the Pakistani head coach, but I think the first stint, it's almost like a recurring theme in terms of the one in India also. But I think let's call it the first stint. During that time, your tenure, it resulted in like the first ever World Cup qualifying victory for Pakistan over Cambodia in 2023. So this was like a remarkable milestone at that time. But my specific question to you is basically what would you have said, or looking at it right now, how would you outline your vision for the structure and governance and financial sustainability that needs to basically be laid in the Pakistani Federation for football to grow and thrive?
Look, I think there are, for me, 2 or 3 major issues at the moment. And one of them is coach education. Okay, we really need to focus on the local Pakistani coaches. They have been denied access to a lot of coaching courses because of the ban and what have you. I think that's major. Better coaches makes better players. Okay, I think we need to focus on our state leagues or regional leagues. There's talk of a national league where they would bring lots of foreign players and lots of foreign coaches. And I don't have a problem with the foreign coaches, but those foreign coaches need to be coaching Pakistani players to develop, to get them better. There's a population of 250 million. And I think football is as popular as cricket, in my humble opinion, in Pakistan as it is in India. It's just they haven't had the tools, media, merchandising, TV rights and what have you to grow the game in the manner that it should be. But I think education, I think regional leagues with local Pakistani players, in 2-3 years' time, yeah, maybe we can have a national league and bring 3 foreigners or 4 foreigners. But why waste our money on foreign players who are coming? And some of them go for the experience, some go because they actually want to play, and some go because they've never been to that particular country. Or that'd be nice. Let's live in India, for example. We must focus on coach education, on building the provincial leagues, because then we will have more Pakistan players ready to play for the national team, for their club sides. And then we can talk about a sponsored national league. In fact, you can get the teams from the leagues, from the regional leagues. Whoever wins their region can qualify for the next thing. But I'm a coach educator. I was with FIFA for over 20 years. I think I can help in coach education as well. And I know the AFC are more than willing to help me, to help the Pakistan Federation to do that. So yeah, I think those are the 2-3 issues. And I'm not talking just about men's football either. I'm talking about women's football as well. So
Yeah,
it goes hand in hand for me.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about women's football in Pakistan, but I'll go ahead regardless.
Well, they're quite good, actually. The Pakistan women's team are quite good. Adil Rizitsky, the coach there, he's doing a good job with, I would say, less limited resources than I have, but it's pretty close.
Yeah. Okay. So the similar priorities, and obviously you're a big advocate for state leagues, as you mentioned or hinted at. So let's transition to basically outside of football, family and the human side of coaching. We see coaches, we see players in football, we see the sort of like position they have in the game. And everyone admires to basically grab that spot. And obviously it's very, very tough. It's almost like a lottery in the sense that, the sense of being able to make it. Reading your book, I think the epilogue, the last phase of your book, your wife and your daughter basically wrote like a moving story saying basically that your coaching career has impacted their lives in terms of giving them the ability to travel all around the world. Can you sort of like humanize the other side of a coach and how it's basically been at a tremendous sacrifice to your family or cost to your family?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Look, I think I never thought about it as a sacrifice. I needed to, I think, like most parents, you need to put food on the table. I wasn't very good at anything else, I suppose, because I didn't want to be good at anything else. I just want to be a good coach, a good coach educator. And now I want to be a brilliant sporting director. But I think that my wife and the 3 girls had many moments where I was not in their life because I was in Sudan or Malawi or India. I mean, in India, the first time they came with me to Nepal as well. So it was just something I had to do if I wanted to be in football. Again, I don't have any animosity towards anybody or think that I have not had a wonderful career so far. But if I couldn't get a job in England, or I can't get a job in Cyprus for a reason, well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to coach. So the option would be to go into youth football and then you get put in a little box that you're a youth coach. Very difficult to get out of that box afterwards. And so I wanted to coach at the highest level I could possibly go. And if that meant that I would be sorting the letters out at a post office for Christmas and separating them to make some money so that I could go and coach somewhere that was going to give me the opportunity, then I would do that. I would do anything to be in football. And I've done a lot of things that, as you said earlier, most people wouldn't even dream of. But my girls, my 4 girls, that includes my wife, have understood that this is what I need to do and this is what he does. This is what allows them to go to university or buy the things that they need and so on and so forth. And they have accepted that. In June the 11th, I will be married for 30 years. And so now, it's okay, it's me and my wife. And if I get the next job is in, let's say, the US or Canada or South Africa, she might want to come with me, but that would be her choice. It's fantastic to be able to do what you want to do and know that everybody at home is backing you 100%. I have applied for multiple jobs in England and various other countries. And you don't always get what you want in this life. It never is exactly how you plan. I mean, I never planned to go to Sudan or Malawi or India, but the job was available. They liked what I had to say. They looked at my previous track record and this guy's going to give us results. This guy's going to improve us. This guy's going to make us better. And I genuinely believe wherever I go, I will make the club or the National Association better than they are right now. I think it's that one-tracked mind, the belief that I have in my ability as a coach and my ability as a human being and a person. I love my players. And I think if you were to ask any of the teams where I had coached, one of the things they would say about me is that he's a player's coach. They don't play, we don't win. They need to be happy. And I need to make sure that they have a clear mind to play football. And I'll do whatever I can to help them have that clear mind, if that makes sense.
No, that's true. Clear mind and resilience is what really matters in this sort of like field. I mean, I think your family, especially your daughter, said that the one lesson they've learned from you is basically being able to focus on trying to find a passion that motivates you to do the best you possibly can, and they've learned that from you. So that's a very admirable sort of like take from them. But in terms of living with pressure as a manager or head coach, in that sense, you've lived with constant pressure. And I know in your book you said, pressure is not really that much. Pressure means nothing to you because you've lived with pressure since you left home at 16. So there's always pressure every day to not fail, and that resonates with all our listeners, I believe. But when does constant media pressure, specifically from the newspapers, from the online press, how do you basically cope with that sort of level of intensity, especially with the social media era that we live in?
Yeah, look, I think it's become a little bit more difficult because of the social media, and everybody has an opinion, and everybody's entitled to their opinion about who I select, who I don't select, why we lost, why we won. And I think that's just the way it is. I try not, look, in this game, I don't get very excited when we win. Okay, so if you have ever watched me at a game, I hardly move even when we score. Occasionally there might be a fist pump, but that's it. And I remember once when I was coaching Chichester College just outside Bournemouth, we scored a goal, and one of the players said to me, "Gaffer, how come you don't celebrate when we score?" I said, "Because we're supposed to score. That's our job." I said, "And you don't see me crying like a baby when we lose." I said, "Because we've been beaten, and now we need to do something about it." So you don't get too high and you don't get too low, and you try to keep a balance. And I think I am a Libra, and I try to keep a balance. I don't get too excited when we win. I remember when we won the game with Cambodia, I have never seen so many grown men cry. And I've said this before, it was unbelievable. I was just extremely happy that I was able to be the one that qualified for the games in the World Cup. And obviously, you go back to the hotel room and I'm buzzing. I couldn't sleep. But I think as a coach, as a leader, you need to manage expectations. I see some coaches screaming at the referees, shouting at the players. For me, that's just nonsense. If you have not done your job from Monday to Friday, or the 3 or 4 days that you have to prepare for the game, you screaming and shouting, if there's 2,000 or 3,000, they don't hear you. They don't want to hear you. It's just that, showing the people, look, I'm passionate about my job, and that's why I'm screaming at the players for 90 minutes in a game. That's just nonsense. I do that in training. If you come to training and watch me train, I'm non-stop. I'm on them all the time. It's like, what are you doing? Let's go. We should do this. Why did you hit the ball over the bar? Because you're leaning back or whatever. So that's called coaching. But in the game, they need to be calm. You need to be calm, calmer than anybody else. You're representing 250 million in my case, and I need to behave as an ambassador to that country or to that club. Me screaming up and down on the touchline in my tracksuit is not the right picture, not for me.
Not the best. Like expanding on your sort of coaching philosophy or leadership principles, if a coach was listening, or aspiring coach, a young aspiring coach was listening to this podcast or watching it, what advice would you give them specifically around this sort of like quote that you made or you gave in the book, "You're as good as you want to be"? Can you expand on this sort of like mindset?
I think first and foremost, we are not rock stars. We are not people who invented a cure for cancer. We teach people how to play football. We are teachers, okay? And I think teaching people is the best thing ever, because you've given them the ability to go and make money, have a career, and all the rest of it. So be the best that you can be, whatever that means to each individual. But I think understand your players, know your players, what makes them tick. which one of them is having issues? And how do you know he's having issues? Well, look at the body language and you can tell, but you can only tell if you make time for your player. I spend a lot of time trying to find out the player, how many kids does he have? How is his wife? We'll bring the wives in. We'll have events where we can interact and create a oneness, if I may say, within the club or within that national association. It's very important that you understand that the players have lives, they have problems as well. And I think that I go back to that word emotional intelligence. It's very important to understand that. I want to help the players as much as I possibly can, because when they go on the pitch and it's raining or it's heavy or the pressure or what, they're going to play that little bit more for you, I think. I don't know if that answers the question exactly.
No, it does. It covers it well. And expanded on that, I think you've spoken about fear being a fuel, and I wouldn't ask you if that fear is still there. I'm sure it is, and this resonates with me also. But looking back, what would you tell your younger self in terms of the path that you're going to go on? The advice you'd give to that young person and say, Stephen, listen, this is what you need to know.
So I will go back to the fear, because you should have fear. I think if you are not worried about your job, about your performance, you don't care. You don't care enough to work a little bit harder to make it better. You don't care enough to fix the problems that some people would have said to you, look, maybe you should be doing this. If I go back to my younger self, I would probably tell myself, don't tell everybody what you're thinking. Okay, if you ask me what I'm thinking, I'm going to tell you because you asked me. And I think especially now, people are less inclined to want to hear something that they don't want to hear, if that makes sense. And I'm thinking, well, my job is to help players improve. If I don't tell them what's wrong, then how are they going to know? And if they don't know what's wrong, then how are they going to fix what's wrong? So I feel it's my job, but I know when I speak to recruiters or CEOs or owners, they sometimes don't want me to paint the picture. Maybe they already know, or maybe they don't want to know. But if you don't know what's wrong with your club, how are you going to fix it? And it could be something small. My defense every time is that I will tell you what I think is wrong because you asked me, but I will also help you and tell you how to fix it. I don't think there's too much in football that I haven't seen. I have been coaching all my life, mainly with limited resources, limited facilities. I'm thinking one day I'm going to get a top club with everything that I possibly want. It's going to be like Christmas Day. It is what it is. I said to you before, extremely privileged to be in football. And as long as I breathe, I want to be involved.
Yeah, that's a remarkable statement, but it's true. It comes across from everything you've done and everything you've said you do. And like you said in one of your interviews, you're a winner. So that resonates with a lot of people that will be listening to this. In one of your sort of like interviews, or I think in the book itself, you've warned against putting profit before purpose, especially in South Asian football. If a FIFA executive was listening, and I'm sure you have access to them as you've worked there for a long time, what would you be advising them on in terms of trying to create not an equitable level playing field, but a more sort of like competitive playing field across South Asia?
Well, I have to revert to Dan Plumley for this because, look, I think it's you need to be sustainable on a financial. You can't spend what you don't have. And it really is amazing that we have top clubs that cannot seem to regulate their books. They have top financial advice. They have accountants for the accountants. And yet, how can you be spending more than you're making? I mean, in South Asia, the Indian Super League has done really well recently. But I think that there needs to be a cap for a lot of teams. I think that would help them more, knowing that this is the amount you can spend. But if you don't have that, then you can't spend it. TV money should be shared for me, not just in the first division, but in the second division, the third division. TV money should go all the way down the pyramids in any country, in any league, because that's where you're going to get development. That's where you're going to get people playing the game at lower levels. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I just cannot understand how you have 100 million and you're in debt for 50 million. It just doesn't make sense to me.
No.
What are you spending the money on? Are players' wages mostly of it. So if you don't have the money to pay somebody £25,000 a week, then why are you paying it? Where are you going to get it from? A trusted board member or a donor or something like that? Yeah, but when the donor says we don't want to do it and you're committed to the contract for 3 years, what happens then? I mean, it's ridiculous, really. Some of these financial situations, develop your academy. Look at Borussia Dortmund, one of the top clubs in the world at developing and selling on, at buying. I think they bought Jude Bellingham, was it for 12 million or something? 15 million, if I'm not mistaken, and sold him for 30 million. I mean, this is proper business. I mean, it's develop your academy. Each player in your academy has got to be worth 100,000 right off the bat. Now, they don't all develop to be 100,000, but in the beginning, they're potentially 50,000, 100,000, whatever you want to label them. Develop your academy. People say, well, it takes too long. Yes, anything that is going to last is not going to come in 1 month, 2 months, unless you have a bucket loads of money and there's no limits. And not many people have that.
Yeah, you just summarize financial sustainability in a nutshell. So, I mean, you've coached India, you've coached Nepal, you've coached Pakistan, and coaching Pakistan at the present moment. If we were to ask you what unique strengths do each of these South Asian nations bring, and what potentially would each of these nations be able to leverage from the other, what would those be?
Look, I think India, they're a little bit further ahead. They've had the Indian Super League for more than 10 years now. And in Pakistan, they have a wonderful opportunity now. They're going to have their elections with the new Pakistan Football Federation. So they will be able to reset the button. And I hope focus on coach education, on having regional leagues and developing the football in Pakistan, because they love the football there. India, I think we have the Indian Super League now for some time. I think there needs promotion relegation, which is going to happen for the first time in India this year, I believe. I think there's so much ability in both countries. But again, it's about developing the coaches, better players. And I don't think we do enough of that in either of those two countries at the moment. I really do want to see better coaches in India, Indian coaches, and in Pakistan.
Yeah, it's a fair point. So let's transition to the sort of like the final round of questions. So this is basically where I ask you a quick question and you give me your first thought that comes to mind. So yeah, here goes. So I think the first one would be, what comes to mind when you think of the toughest times you've been through in terms of trying to penetrate the football, not pyramid, but football industry. How do you sum up that period in your life, in general?
I would say extremely difficult. I think not having had a league career in England obviously doesn't get me many jobs. I think that's one of the biggest issues. Not being a big name or coming from certain countries, that doesn't help. So when somebody wins the Euros, everybody wants the country from who won the Euros. They want coaches from those countries, which is ridiculous when you think about it. But again, we come back to decision makers making decisions based on someone's nationality or someone's played for Italy or Germany or what have you. And that's the criteria that you're hiring him because of. And I think that's unfair to a lot of coaches out there who have worked very, very hard in the trenches to come up, and they are not given top jobs because they played at a certain level. They're given top jobs because they've done it. They've worked hard. They've been successful elsewhere, and then they're given those jobs. Those are the guys that, for me, have my complete respect.
So I'm not going to ask you what's the toughest job you've taken, but I'll ask you about your time in Sudan. So if I'm not mistaken, the book, you basically highlighted how the ICC, International Court of Justice, was basically issued an arrest for the then president of Sudan. What did it feel like at that time living there, or processing that moment as an outsider, as a non-Sudanese?
This is this is where the chameleon comes in, because the moment I go to a country, I am one of them, especially if you're the national coach. So you figure how many million people are in Sudan now, 250 million in India, 1.4 in billion in India. And they've asked me to be the coach. And so in Sudan, I considered myself, for that time that I was there, as Sudanese as I possibly could be. I ate their food. I observed Ramadan. I did everything that I believe showed the respect to their country, their culture. Yeah, I'm English, but right now, when I wore the national dress in Nepal on the bench for the semi-final of the SAF, I wanted to show them that I was one of them. So in Sudan, it was the same. I honestly, the only time where I felt my life was in danger, to be honest, was when I was picked up by the guys in the SUV trucks, and they didn't say anything to me. They just stuck me in the back of the truck, and they were holding the Kalashnikovs. And I'm thinking, this is the end. Luckily, 20 minutes later, we arrived outside the stadium. I can tell you I was a little bit relieved. So I never felt in danger walking the streets in Sudan. And the people were very hospitable towards me, and especially my boss Kamal Shadat, who was the president at the time. He was a fantastic person. I didn't feel it.
Right. And I want to paint a sort of a hypothetical scenario. So I know you have a relationship with the former Arsenal manager, Wenger.
Yeah.
What would you say if I was to put you in a position where you were the Arsenal manager at that time during the period where Arsenal were basically going through a slump as a result of the stadium move or the rebuilding of the stadium? What would you say? What would you have done differently to what Arsene Wenger did at that time?
I would say absolutely nothing. Arsenal funded that stadium from within. There was always going to be, and I don't know all the ins and outs to speak freely about this, but the little I know was that he had a lot of constraints on him because of that. You know, Tottenham fan, you're going to say excuses and what have you. Look, I think they qualified for Europe more than 15, 16 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. They were able to build one of the best stadiums in the UK. They were still successful. They never fell out the top six. And I think he honestly, he did a fantastic job. And he's a financial wizard, by the way. So I'm not about to sit here and say he should have done this or he should have done that. Could we have won more championship? Yeah, but he would need to have spent more money. But I repeat, we never came out of the top European spots in his time. Is the league every year. I think being in Europe every year for 20 years or whatever it was is quite an achievement, given the constraints that he had as well. So he was obviously the best manager Arsenal have ever had.
I didn't expect it. Yeah, sorry, I didn't expect a different answer from you, to be honest. So yeah, that's well said.
Arsenal till I die.
Yeah, definitely. Gun is right. So yeah, I mean, you should find out quite a few questions. You said that India feels like a third home. Can you explain to me what you meant by that?
Listen, when you go to a foreign country, you always feel like you're a foreigner. Okay, you go to Malawi and you go. I don't feel that in India. I never felt it. I don't feel that in Pakistan. I felt a little bit like that in Malawi. I didn't feel like that in Rwanda. I never felt that in Nepal. Look, people have been so good to me, wanting me to see the hospitality. I mean, the Nepalese go to Nepal. It's a fantastic country, and everywhere I've been, it's been like that. It was a little bit difficult in Malawi, I would say, but the people there also. I still have yesterday somebody from Malawi texted me, one of the players, and it's great. Look, I don't have anything bad to say about anybody else's country. I tell people, look, think about how difficult it is to be the national coach of your own country, okay? And you think, wow. Now think about what it means for another country to ask you to be their national coach. What they have done or how they must be feeling to say, well, in all of the country, we want this guy to be our coach. I mean, it's such an honor. So I can't honestly say, and I have not been badly treated in any of the countries that I've been in as a national coach. I have nothing bad to say about anybody. And trust me, if I did, I would.
Yeah, so and final question for you, Stephen. For anyone listening, for any aspiring young coach or aspiring player who wants to become a coach or sporting director, as you basically stated that you're also a sporting director in that sense. What would you say to that person looking for advice on how to build a career? Not like yours, obviously not possible. Everyone walks their own path. But in terms of how to build a career of resilience, of vision, of integrity especially.
Okay, I think I would say be yourself. People say to me, who are the people that you model yourself on? And is it Arsene Wenger? Because I met him a couple of times. there's a little bit of him, there's a little bit of Sir Alex, there's a little bit of Marcelo Lippi, there's a little bit of... You just have to take little pieces from other people and stick that together. But most importantly, you have to be true to yourself. You've got to be honest with yourself, real with yourself. You can't copy anybody. And I think we have a lot of people who are trying to be people that they are not. But you know what? The players are not stupid, and the players see through the charade with some coaches who are trying to be something that they are not. I mean, if you are not that guy, then why are you pretending to be that guy? So be honest, maybe not as honest as I have been sometimes, because I've probably talked myself out of a few jobs in my passion to explain to them how I can fix the job. Because if you get called to jobs because they need a coach, and that means there's a problem. And so you've got to fix the problem, but you have to know what the problem is before you can fix it. So I would say to anybody who wants to be a coach or to lead people is you need to be transparent. You need to be honest with them. You need to tell them how they can get better. You need to help them to get better. And then you've got to make sure that you understand that they're getting better. So it's no good saying to somebody that, okay, you need to fix that. This is what you need to do. Off you go. No. Do you understand what you need to fix? Yes, tell me. What do you need? I need to, well, yeah, okay, but now maybe you need to do this or maybe you need to do that. So make sure they understand what needs to be fixed, and then check in on them if you care about them, if you have the empathy to find out what's happening. I told you, people calling me and how are you doing? What's going on? Okay, how's the baby? These I actually care. You can't fake that. And I think that's the most important thing is be honest, be yourself. And no matter how tough it gets, stick to the job. Don't cave.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, Stephen, you've definitely been yourself across this journey that you've lived, a very interesting life. I think
Not everybody likes that.
True, that's true. But it's still integrity at the highest. I mean, all the presidents, players, federations, and also journalists you've interacted with can vouch for that. So well done, Stephen. It's been an absolute honor having you on the Football Economy. Thank you for sharing your experiences, wisdom, and powerful lessons.
It's been a pleasure, and I wish everybody all the best. And see you at the far post.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with anyone passionate about the business and culture behind the world's biggest game. Thank you, and see you next time.